Thank you.
My man.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought I'll pick like a bit of a different headline. So it's actually this kind of like don't think, do think. It's actually one of these Bazaar rules that we came up with in this HP Bazaar program that was running back. Actually, we started like 1999. So yeah, I guess most of you were born then. But anyway, like long time ago, and actually, so I kind of like started my my career, and I never really liked thinking about like careers or like too much planning. But anyway, so I started actually working at the original startup. So that was kind of like the company that Bill and Dave started in their garage in Palo Alto in 1939. And that's why we all in the startup industry have to suffer all these garage stories, you know, from Silicon Valley. So Bill and Dave started HP, Hewlett-Packard in 1939. So that's now 90 years ago, so a long time ago. And that's then where like Silicon Valley started, and yeah, why we have all these like garage stories all over the planet. But yeah, so that was actually a great place to start, and then of course that took me to Silicon Valley. Typically, I mean, I worked there for some time, and then during my time working at HP in Finland, then I typically ended up going to Silicon Valley like once a month. So I always say that it's one of those places where I don't need like a navigator to find my way around. And that was kind of like a good experience. And then nowadays, when I hear about all of these wannabe Silicon Valleys, and everybody wants to be Silicon Valley of this, Silicon Valley of that, then it's good to put into perspective, because most people who talk about all these like various Silicon Valleys don't have a clue about what they're actually talking about, because first of all, they've never been to the Silicon Valley, they've heard about it, and it's like some kind of magical place. And I mean, of course, it's a fantastic place, but it always helps if you actually know what you're talking about. But anyway, so yeah, this topic of mine today, you know, don't think, do think, was something that when we're doing this HP Bazaar program, and okay, actually with HP Bazaar, so first question typically when I talk about that is like, what? So what is that? What was that? Like a bazaar? And actually the background to that, again, it's like a Silicon Valley kind of like thing that 1999, or let's say late 90s, so HP, you know, right there in the middle of the Silicon Valley, very successful selling all these like client server like systems. So that was like the trend back then, and you know, boring infrastructure to enterprises, if you really look at it. You know, all these servers run all these like SAPs and what have you. And very successful, you know, and then the internet happened. And I think it's very interesting because if you look at, again, you have a company that kind of like started the Silicon Valley, very successful, right in the middle of the action, and then the internet happens. So then you're like, how could they not see it coming? And they actually got very, let's say, or the business got hit by you know, these guys from this little upstart called Sun Microsystems, that they started saying that we are the dot in .com. And then when people started doing like internet stuff and something in .com, who do you call? Oh, those like Sun guys, they are like the dot in .com, probably we need to call them. And then they picked up the phone and ordered like some boring like servers from Sun, but they were somehow like internet. So then HP actually was like, what the fuck happened? I mean, like, who are these guys? Who do they think they are? I mean, we're like HP, we're selling all these like important servers to important companies, and then you have this like upstart. So I mean, we all know that that's typically what happens, that when you're, the most like scary thing is that when you're, you know, like successful. Because then you think that, oh, we figured it out, and then, you know, like, boom, something hits you, like in this case, Sun. Yeah, anyway, so then we had to do something at HP, and then, of course, here in Europe, we have like a lot of vacations, and I was working at HP doing this business development for like Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and then my boss at the time had his summer vacation, and then there was some planning session in Palo Alto, and he said, oh, Peter, I'm on vacation, why don't you like go there? I said, okay, sure. And I had been, my job was selling all this boring infrastructure to mobile operators, and starting in Finland and Europe. And it was very interesting that until then, it's been very much about, whenever we needed to solve like a customer problem, then we looked at like the US, Silicon Valley, that okay, there's this customer, they need this, what should we do? And we always found a solution. But then when mobile happened, all of a sudden we were actually leading. I still remember my American colleagues telling me that, oh, Peter, yeah, that mobile stuff for mobile phones, we don't really need that in the US because, hey, everywhere pay phones. You don't need mobile phones. And this is not like even a joke. I mean, that was like the case then that, of course, they learned since and, of course, taken over with Google and Apple and all of that. But it was kind of like interesting attitude. But what it meant that we had to kind of like start figuring out things ourselves, and we couldn't just like look to the US. And that was like when Nokia started happening and all of that. But anyway, so I got invited to this strategy session, Palo Alto, and then like what can we do about this like internet thing? And then we came up that, okay, maybe everything will become like a service, and okay, we need somebody to do these services. Okay, who could do all these cool new services for our boring infrastructure? Startups. Okay, how do we attract startups to HP? Let's like do this little marketing, partnering, developer-like program. Everybody else was saying that, okay, they're doing these competence centers, excellence centers. And of course, being from Helsinki, then we're like, okay, we're modest Finnish people, so we're not like that excellent and maybe not always that central. So let's call it something else. And, so we started calling it the HP Bazaar. And it worked because every time when I then presented that, oh, we have this Bazaar thing, then it's like, what is it? Is it like a partnering program, marketing program, developer program? I said, no, it's like all of that and more. It's a Bazaar. It's a physical site, magical place in Helsinki, Finland, right there, center of the world, as you all know. And then Carly Fiorina, who was our CEO, she actually came from Lucent. They missed mobile. We announced this thing in October '99, then in Geneva. Then she went to Singapore, met with the Prime Minister. A few days later, I get a call. Oh, Carly met with our Prime Minister, and she mentioned this Bazaar thing. We need one. Could you make it happen? Okay, flight, Singapore, done. And then we started doing these physical sites, so we ended up with Helsinki, Singapore, Tokyo, back to Valley in Cupertino, Toronto, Beijing, Shanghai, Bangalore, London, Amsterdam, Milan. Built kind of like co-working spaces, accelerators, incubators before they became like a thing. And yeah, then we ended up attracting like 600-700 startups working with us, and then we delivered all kinds of cool things like ringtones and games and stuff to mobile operators and like people all over the planet. And then when I was doing that, then in 2003 organized a little game-making competition to make the best possible mobile multiplayer game, and then Niklas, Kim and Jarno from Aalto, or actually it wasn't called Aalto at the time, but Aalto University nowadays, took part in the competition. They actually created this game called King of the Cabbage World, and then they won the competition. And 2003, if you remember, that was when our friends at Nokia were still like making phones, so they had come out with the 7650 and 3650, magical like smartphones. And yeah, but anyway, so Niklas, Kim and Jarno won the competition, came to me, what do we do now? We're students, and I said, okay, and I have the same advice like always, that you should do what you love to do. You love making games, why don't you start a company to make games? So they started this little company called Rovio in 2003, and then over the following 6 years they made 51 games, 52nd game that came out almost 10 years ago, 11th of December 2009, so it's like 10-year celebration this year. Was called Angry Birds, and yeah, it took off, and then 4 billion downloads and movies and stuff happened. But yeah, so the point that I'm making here is that you can't like plan these things carefully. So the kind of like the common denominator with all of these kind of like random things that I just mentioned, HP Bazaar, Rovio, bunch of other like stuff, is that you can't always like analyze everything carefully. So I couldn't say like, oh, I'm going to start working at this like HP company. They, came up with the Silicon Valley, so it kind of like makes sense. Garage, whatever, games, boom. So it doesn't work like that. And I think that it's very important. And one thing, besides doing what you love to do, what I think is like super important is the doing. No matter if you're making games or whatever you're making at your startup. The most important thing is to actually kind of like get your act together and like start doing. And I think all of us, or at least many of us, and especially if you're working in like bigger organizations, then we're very good at like really analyzing and carefully thinking that, okay, step by step, and how should we do this? You know, that, you know, like we now need to build this tunnel between Helsinki and Tallinn, so let's like carefully plan it for 10 years, and then maybe like in the 40s we could have trains running. Yeah, that's one way of doing it, or then you just like, okay, we're gonna have trains running the 24th of December 24. And then, you know, you say that, and then you start thinking that, okay, like, how do I make it happen? So not always like carefully analyzing the how and like all the bits and pieces, but actually like doing, because guess what? You learn so much more by doing stuff than just like thinking and analyzing and not doing. So that's kind of like the whole idea here with this, like, don't think, do, and then you think again, you know, based on what you learned. Take the Rovio example, 51 games, and then 50-second game Angry Birds. So of course, I mean, then it would have been cool if you could have just made one game and it would immediately be this massive hit. But anybody who has ever done games or anybody done anything knows that when you're doing new stuff, it's not always successful. Actually, more likely than not, it will not be successful. So I think it's, again, very important that, you know, by doing stuff you learn. And, you know, like, it's not like big secret or something, but when I was at Latitude 59 in 2016, so or 2 years ago now, and then I had dinner there with, yeah, Valdar is here, and then a bunch of other, so like Finns and Estonians. And we're like sitting there after, you know, like a great day at Latitude 59. They had almost as many people as here, so not as quite as big as Startup Day, but, you know, for Tallinn, not too bad. Yeah, I've understood that there's some kind of little rivalry, just like we have between different cities in Finland. So yeah, but great job, by the way, on this Startup Day. So I really love what you're doing here in Tartu. But yeah, so we were having dinner after Latitude 59. And then, you know, of course, it always happens when Finns and Estonians get together, then like, oh, it would be very nice, you know, if we could get across this like body of water a bit faster than the 2 hours that it takes nowadays. So then, you know, I was following my own rule of not like thinking too much about stuff, so okay, just like, and Valdar was there, so can, you know, tell you that it's actually true. So then I just said, okay, let's make it happen. We're discussing this, so, you know, like, let's build a tunnel. And I didn't know anything about, and of course, I can't claim to be like leading expert on tunneling even now, but I've learned a bit, you know, in the 2.5 years. So then just walked over to the table next to us because, you know, it's always when you do these big infrastructure projects, it's important to also keep the government up to date. So we had your then foreign minister sitting in the table next to us. So I walked over to her and said that, I just thought I'll, you know, make this little announcement here that we actually decided to build a tunnel. And then she was looking at me that like, what tunnel? So I said, yeah, the one to Helsinki, you know. We decided to build it. And then it's like, who exactly? And I said like, yeah, you know, do you see those guys there? You know, me and those guys, we're making it happen. And she had the exact same reaction as you guys have now. She laughed. She was somehow like not taking that seriously. I don't understand like why. You know, there's this guy in like a red hoodie, you know, like saying something about like a tunnel. And then you know, then I started executing and doing it. I didn't really think about like all the details that, okay, how much will this cost? How long will it take? But then like I was lucky enough that it was actually the same week, you know, the news came out that they have completed the St. Gotthard Tunnel, world's longest railroad tunnel under the Alps. So then I got this, and it cost, I don't remember the exact thing, but then we just rounded up that, okay, this is slightly longer, so okay, yeah, 15 billion. Sounds about right. So that's the budget. That's how we made it. And then after that, I said, okay, what would be like a good, like, probably takes 5 years to build something like this. So then okay, let's give ourselves like a bit like margin, because dealing with various governments and other public players, it's not always like perfectly smooth and fast. So maybe we give ourselves time until 24th of December 24. So then that's like when trains will be running. That's how we did the plan, and that's what we're now making happen. And it must be true, because if you go to Super Alko or one of the few key like Alko stores in Finland, you can buy the Helsinki-Tallinn tunnel vodka. And on the packaging, there's the story about the tunnel, and it says that trains will be running the 24th of December 24. So it must be true if it's on a bottle of vodka. So, that's how it works. And we gave this to our Chinese friends who are now like involved in building the tunnel, and they were like, so how did you decide on this 24th of December 24? I said, okay, I go to China all the time, and I've learned that it's important to pick these like lucky numbers and easy to remember numbers. So that's how we picked it. And we put it on the bottle, so it's true. So they bought it, and now we're like making it happen on that time frame. So it wasn't like based on like carefully analyzing, but it was just like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, this is the budget, and then we started executing. And guess what? During the last 2.5 years, I learned a lot about tunneling. I can't say that I'm like an expert, but I probably know more than most of you guys about tunneling. Probably. So how did I learn that? I learned that by doing. That's the way. I didn't like sit down and then let's do a careful like fantastic plan and get this tunnel done by like 2040. Probably would have come up with lots of problems, lots of issues, and it can't be done, and 15 billion, like where would you get that? Actually, it turns out that the funding is not that difficult. I kind of like thought that, okay, like how difficult can it be? I've raised a bunch of money for many different startups, so what's the difference here? I mean, there's like a few more zeros at the end. That's it. Same exact process. And actually, I would even say that it's even like easier in some respect, because you don't need to worry about like every little detail. I mean, raising 100K and then, like your angel investor will ask you about like, who's your wife and your best friend and like what is going on here, and like, do you really need the 100,000? Could you maybe get by like 35K or something like that? So here, like we're talking about 15 billion, so then you don't really need to worry about like every little detail. I mean, you need to look at the big picture and like execute. So it turns out that it's not that different to raise 15 million than 15 billion. And basically what we announced 3rd of December last year, that we now raised the first 100 million euros, so it's one of the bigger rounds in our part of the world, and and we got a very good deal. So we raised 100 million now to do the more detailed planning for the tunnel, and we're basically going to use that to create the technical plan and all of that next year. So it takes a bit of money to build these plans. Actually, when I first started working on the tunnel project, I was told that, Peter, you have to understand that just to do the plan will take 10 years. And I was like, what? Like, how can it take 10 years to do a plan for anything? I mean, it's impossible. And it turns out that it takes half a year to make the plan, so it's not like 10 years. But I mean, of course, if you're just sitting there and thinking and speculating about what you could do, it can take 10 years, probably 20. So anyway, so we basically just started doing that, and now this year we'll have the plan completed. We'll probably get to some construction work even this year. And again, it's very much moving. It's very much happening. And I think that this, again, what I found out in all kind of my projects and companies and what I've been involved with is that always, no matter if you're making a game or if you're building a tunnel or doing anything, you learn so much more by actually doing it. I mean, of course, I got a bit concerned in our tunnel project when I read about the St. Gotthard tunnel, and it said that it took almost 20 years to make it. And it's okay, 20 years, shorter. Okay, we're trying to do it in 5 years. Maybe we need to break some laws of nature, and that's always a bit tough. So when you do your projects, try to define them in such a way that you don't need to like break too many laws of nature, because that can be like tough. I mean, making miracles happen is like easy, but like when you deal with like laws of nature, not so easy. So that was like a bit of a concern that, okay, shorter tunnel, 20 years. So, but then, you know, again, I started talking to some guys, Pöyry, Eijin, some of these guys. Actually, Pöyry had been involved in the St. Gotthard tunnel. And then I talked to the, like the geological survey people in Finland. And then they told me that, hey, actually, Peter, it's like super easy because you're in luck. You're actually going under the sea, not under the Alps. So guess what? We can actually use several of these TBMs, several of these tunnel boring machines. So what we're actually doing now in our tunnel project, we are going to bore in 8 directions, 2 tunnels, like any given time. So we need 16 tunnel boring machines. So we start like at the Helsinki airport, and we start coming towards Tallinn. We start at the Ülemiste, so Tallinn airport, and going towards Helsinki. Then we have a station in between the Finnish side, drilling in both directions. Island, Finnish side, both directions. Island, Tallinn side, both directions. And we can actually complete the physical construction of the tunnel in 2 years. It's pretty good. And then we have like some additional like margin for building the 4 stations and all of that. But it's still, you know, like very much doable. So much easier than going under the Alps. Because, of course, if you have like 5 kilometers, but let's say 2 kilometers of rock on top of the tunnel, then you can't just like, okay, let's drop a tunnel boring machine here and there, and, you know, like it just is a bit more difficult to go under the Alps than under the sea. So again, you know, learning by doing. Not worrying too much about like, you know, Gotthard tunnel taking 20 years, and our tunnel only have like, for the project now until 24. So making that happen. Then also what started happening when we started sharing publicly about the tunnel, a lot of people started contacting us. And I mean, some of you have been to our monthly events. I mean, we do monthly public events open for anybody every other month in Helsinki, every other month in Tallinn. I think the next one we have in Tallinn is 11th of February, so it's a Monday, so you know, you're more than welcome to join. But there we always share, you know, the progress, where are we, what kind of challenges and all of that. So now, because we have been very open and very public about this, and I think that's actually the only way to do these kind of projects, because again, you can't make them happen like secretly, that I'm just like secretly building a tunnel because I need a few permits from the government and all of that. So very public, very open, and the great thing when you do that, and this is also true for, you know, any startup, no matter if you're building, you know, tunnels or games, that when you share what you're doing and your ideas, guess what? People will help you. They will have more ideas. They will make your idea better. So we got contacted by these great guys from Bratislava, Slovakia. They've been working on this thing called plasma drilling, 10 years, 20 patents, really cool stuff. So now we're going to be able to use plasma drilling, put it on these like TBM machines, and we're going to go to at least twice the speed compared to what's been the case so far. So plasma, you know, we heat up the rock to like 6,000 degrees, you know, like the sun, and then it makes the hard rock that we have on the Finnish side, you know, very, it basically, it doesn't melt it, but it makes it like softer, so we can go twice the speed, reduce the friction, all of that. And then we have some other like cool innovations that we've brought to the table as well. So again, better boring machines, better building technologies, all of that. Then, and also we've attracted like some very good partners. So we have Pöyry, Eijins, Fira, but then we have also now started talking to people in places like China, Japan, all over Europe. We started the year by visiting your Prime Minister, Jüri Ratas, and your Minister of Infrastructure, Kadri Simpson, the 8th of January this year. And then we had with us actually CREC, so it doesn't probably tell you anything, but it's a China Railway Engineering Company. It's the world's biggest construction company. They have 300,000 people working. They are number 57 on the Fortune 500 list, 130 billion in turnover, so fairly significant. And we had President Chen with us, and then also some of our investors. And then we had a meeting with the ministers and some advisors, and it was actually really cool because then the economic advisor asks President Chen, who runs all the international operations for CREC, that it's sounds like a very aggressive time schedule that you're planning now after you get the permits and all of that. You're planning to build this in about 5 years, actually 4 years if you want to be exact. So then President Chen said that yes, he actually is not a tunnel engineer by trade, but he actually started his career by building bridges and all of that. And then he said that, okay, at CREC, now we're looking at this, we're going to build 100 kilometers, 2 tunnel pipes between Helsinki and Tallinn in 4 years. So yes, it's very ambitious, very aggressive. But on the other hand, CREC has built 18,000 kilometers of railroad tunnel in China. So probably they can handle 100 kilometers in 4 years. Not a problem. So again, example again, when you're doing these things, you're finding partners. Of course, I couldn't, build this myself, just taking a shovel in hand and doing that. But, together with a few friends, of course, we can make it happen. And we can make it happen, on time, on budget, all of that. I mean, how difficult can it be? So and that's, how I started this whole thing. So I didn't, really think about it, and analyze it carefully for 10 years, and then now I think I know how to do it, and then I start doing. No, I started doing, and then, I stopped to think a little bit, and then I'm doing some more. And I think that this is something that is very important no matter what you do. So, keep that in mind, that no matter what you are doing now, first of all, do what you love to do. But then I really want to finish here by saying that, don't think, do think. Thank you.
Thank you.